So, Scott Jund released a video the day that I'm recording this where he basically went over this idea that every single killer should have a different percentage knocked off of a djinn that they kicked and a different regression rate. And if you want to watch the entire video, I'll leave it linked in the description down below. It's actually a really cool video. It's like 8 minutes, so it's not that long. So I got to thinking what each killer's regression slash charges lost per second would look like in this hypothetical that Scott proposed. And so that's what we're going to do today. Kind of like when I did the what tear radius would every killer have. So if you didn't catch it when I showed the screenshot earlier from Scott's video, or if you didn't watch Scott's video, I'll go over to this one time. Basically what we're doing is we are going to be giving each of these killers two numbers, a percentage and then a whole number, or a decimal number, whichever one. And that represents how much percentage the killer will take off of a djinn when they first kick it, and then at what rate the djinn regresses. If you're not aware, survivors repair generators at 1 charge per second. And the default right now is 5% of the generator gets knocked off when you kick it, and then it regresses at a rate of 0.25 charges per second. So for every 4 seconds a generator is regressing, that means that a survivor only has to repair it for 1 second to recover that lost progress. With that being said, let's hop right into this. For Trapper, I want to give him, Scott said this in the video, and I think I agree with it, an 8% regression rate when he kicks it, and 2 full charges regressed per second as it is regressing. Trapper is the worst killer in the game for a reason. He's slow. He can't catch people as quickly. He can't confirm as many downs as easily. And it's just really like he needs a reason to kick djinns, and this would be a perfectly fine reason. And I think that that is perfect. Next up is Wraith. Wraith can patrol djinns a little bit faster, but at the end of the day, he is still an M1 killer. So in my opinion, I think I would give Wraith a 6% instant regression with 0.75 charges lost per second. I think that would be perfectly fine for him. He could end up being a djinn kicking machine at times, but he does still kind of need that extra oomph whenever he's going from spot to spot. For Billy, I think that Scott's little example was honestly pretty spot on. 4% regression, I would do 0.15 charges lost per second instead of 0.75. I think he said somewhere in the comments that he brain farted when he made the graphics, so what he meant was 0.15, and I agree, 0.15 charges per second's lost. Nurse is so unbelievably strong, I'd honestly say 3% comes off the djinn instantly, and then 0.15 charges regress per second whenever she kicks a generator. She doesn't need the slowdown, but you know, in this new system, we got to give everybody something. Right? Next up is the Huntress. The Huntress is also very, very, very strong, but she's a 110 killer, so she can't patrol djinns as well, and kicking a djinn can waste a lot of time for her, so I do think that possibly it could be a little bit of a good idea to maybe give her, like, say, the 5% instant that it has now, with a 0.75 regression rate of charges. I think that would be, I honestly, I'd probably say 0.50. I'd say 0.50 for charge regression rate might be a little bit more balanced, so that's what we'll go with. Next up, we have Myers would be the same as Trapper, 8% instant, 2 charges per second regressed for a lot of the same reasons as Myers. He's slow to start, he's slow to move, he doesn't have a lot of patrolling, he doesn't have the ability to down survivors a lot, so it's just, it's too easy to undo his progress, so yeah, that's what we'll give him. Next up is Hag. She is a 110 killer as well, and she's kind of not as bad as people put her out to be. So I would say a 6% instant with a 0.75 charges regression rate would be okay. Next up is the Doctor. The Doctor is a 115 killer. I would give him, honestly, I'd give him 5% with 0.50 as well, just like Huntress. Not that he's as strong as Huntress, but his anti-loot, no. I'd say 6% with 0.75 would work for Doctor. I think Doctor is like he's not strong, but he's not weak either. So I think I think a little bit of an oomph would help him for sure. Next up is Booba. Booba got some changes that got him up into the lower B tier from where he was sitting in the lower C tier. I would say that Booba could get Honestly, I'd probably give Booba 6% with 1 charge per second. Just because even with his changes, you know, he is still good, but it's still kind of easy to get around his chainsaw. So, yeah, we'll give him a little bit of extra power. Fredward. Fredward, we're returning to the tried and true method of 8% with 2 charges per second regression. Even though Fredward can patrol gens easier than both Trapper and Myers, he's still just so fucking shit that I honestly do not believe that that gen patrol would help him much. So yeah, keep him with that. For Pig, I would say Pig relies on generators being completed for her power. So I would do 7% instant with 1 charge per second regressing, just for when she runs out of her power, because she is a pretty bad killer as well. It is hard for her to get downs. It's hard for her to patrol gens. So yeah, I would say 7% instant with 1 charge per second lost. Fuck the Clown, 0% and 0. No, I'm kidding. I would say with the Clown, I would say because he can patrol gens well, I'd say 5% with 0.5 generator regression charges per second would be just fine. It wouldn't be that big of a deal. I would say that would honestly be kind of like the standard, kind of like how 32 meter tear radius is the standard. I think 5% regression with 0.5 charges lost per second would be like a standard I would give a lot of killers. Next up is Spirit. I would give her a 3% regression with probably 0.20 charges a second, maybe 0.15. I'd say 0.15 charges a second. She can end chases way too fast. Has one of the best anti-loops in the game. It's just she's so strong. I think she can deal with the lesser regression rates. Next up is Legion. I'd give Legion a 6% regression with a 0.75 charge rate regression per second. I think that would work out just fine. Legion's pretty weak. He does have slowdown, kind of, sort of, but he is still like just not that great. So I think he does need that little bit of boost. Next up is Plague. I would give Plague the 5% 0.50 charge thing. I think she's fine as is. So I think that, you know, just kind of giving her, honestly, she could probably stay with 0.25 charge. If I'm being real with you, she's strong enough to stay with that for sure. Ghostface is kind of weak, unfortunately. So I would probably give him the I would probably give him a 7% regression with probably like 1 second charge regression per second. I think that would fit Ghostface as the C tier killer that he is pretty well. Next up is Demodoggy. I would say Demodoggy can get the 5% / 0.25. He's a solid middle of the road killer, so he doesn't really need anything. I don't think any changes are necessary. So yeah, we'll keep it with 5% and 0.25. Next up is Oni. Oni could get 4% and 0.25. Just because his Demon Dash is very strong. Actually, I would say 0.50. Because you still are an M1 killer until you get your Demon Dash, but because his Demon Dash is so strong, it's very easy for him to, you know, go from place to place and get stuff and patrol and get quick downs. So the slowdown isn't like as necessary on him, at least in my opinion. Next up is the Death Slinger, another 110 killer, pretty decent 1v1, but he doesn't really have anything outside of that. He's somewhere in the bottom of B tier. I would personally say that he could get a 6% with a 1 charge per second regression rate, and that would work out pretty well for him. Next up is Pyramid Head. I think Pyramid Head should get the 5%, but he should get like 0.25 or 0.20, let's say 0.20 charges, just because his chase and his anti-loop is really, really good. So yeah, I think that would work for him. Next up is Blight. I would give Blight 3% instant regression with 0.10% or 0.10 charge reduction rate. Blight is the second best killer in the game, hands down, and he's very, very close to Nurse. So I think that works out just fine. Next up would be the Twins. The Twins honestly would get like a 5% with a 0.20 charge regression rate, just because like they're very, very good at splitting pressure, and I don't think we need to give them even more pressure to split. You know what I mean? Like, they split pressure with injuries and slugs, and then they also split pressure with gen regression. Yeah, I don't think that's necessary. Next up is the Trickster. I'd give him 5% with the 0.25 regression rate. I think as he is now, he's fine. I've been told he's weak. I don't think he's weak. I just think he's stale. And that's a lot of people's problem. But strength-wise, I think he's perfectly fine, perfectly in the middle, and he doesn't really need that many changes. Next up is Nemesis. Because of Nemesis's time sink, I would say 5% regression with 0.75 charge reduction would be the number that I would go for on him. Next up is Pinhead. With Pinhead, I am going to go ahead and say that his slowdown is not that great, but it does exist. I would say 5% with 0.30 charges lost would be good for him. Artist's cross-mapping ability is pretty fucking strong. She's got the power to pressure gens as it is, so 5% with the 0.25 charge is just fine. Sadako is kind of weak in my opinion. She's somewhere in the C tier. I would say 6% with 0.75 charge regression would probably work for her. Dredge is very map dependent. I would say 6% with a 1 charge regression would work very well for the Dredge. Just because of how map dependent he is. Sure, he could technically patrol stuff really well, but also not really. And he's also got, like, his anti-loop is very meh. So I did not mean to ready up there. His anti-loop is very meh. So I think that is something that he needs. Next up is Whiskers. His chase power is really good, but he still only moves at 4.6 meters a second. So I would say 5% with 0.50 charges reduction would be fine for him. Next up is Knight. Knight already has a lot of gen pressure in his kit, so I would say 5% with 0.75 charge reduction. Probably 0.50, actually. 5% with 0.50 would be fine for him. Not that big of a deal. Although what I would do is I would give Carfax, the 6% and 0.75 charges. I have a rework idea for Knight that's unfortunately not going to come out for a very long time because I'm going to wait for the Knight video for it to happen, but yeah, that is that's what I think. Next up is Skull Merchant. Skull Merchant also has a pretty decent ability to pressure gens. I would say Skull Merchant could get 5% in the 0.25 regression as she gets right now. Singularity's potential to pressure gens is dedicated entirely to whether or not survivors know what an EMP is. If survivors know what an EMP is, then, well, it sucks to be Singularity. So I would say a 5% with a 0.75 charge regression would be perfectly fine for him. Next up is Xenomorph. Xenomorph has a pretty decent ability to pressure gens because of the control stations. So I would say give Xenomorph a 5% with a 0.50 charge reduction as well. Next up is the Chuckster. Chucky is a 110 killer, but he does have an insane chase power, so I would say 5% with the 0.25 charge reduction would be just fine for him. Then we could go with Unknown. Unknown has his teleport, which is inconsistent at best for teleporting where you want to go, but he does have a relatively decent chase because of the teleport and a relatively decent map pressure. So I would say that the Unknown could go with a 5% and a 0.50 charge reductions. And finally, Vecna, who has one of the best anti-loops in the game, and he does have a pretty decent map traversal. Unfortunately, I would say that the map traversal is not enough. So I would give Vecna a 6% with a 0.5 charge reduction. And that's all of the killers. Of course, let me know what you think. It was a pretty interesting idea when I saw Scott's video, and so I thought it'd be cool to kind of toss in what I think each killer should be. So, of course, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Big shout out to Scott Junn for even putting this idea out there, and as always, a great big special thank you to my channel members listed on screen now. If you want to find out how to become a channel member today, get awesome perks like seeing videos early, merch discount codes, and more, then please click that join button down below. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one. Can't get enough daily Dead by Daylight content? Then check out my second channel, The Kaiser Extras, where I upload gameplay footage, me reacting to your Dead by Daylight clips, and more. We also have a new short that goes live every single day, so you can catch up on all the greatest clips from stream. We'll see you over there. Link is in the description.